less calculator.
Less calculator?
And pre-cal, you don't really use a calculator a lot. It's more just hands-on and
You're in pre-cal?
on-ramps. Pre-AP and on-ramps. On-ramps is basically switched the semesters. So what pre-cal learns in the first semester, on-ramps basically learns in the second.
So on-ramps is slower?
No.
It's
reverse.
This reverse semester.
And the credits are different too. For on-ramps, it's kind of like a dual enrollment. We're getting credit through UT programs through Canvas.
What are you getting credit for? What class?
For the, I think it's called Discovery Pre-Cal. But I think it's only worth a semester.
Yes,
it's
only
not
worth 3 hours of
Yeah.
college credit.
You're gonna have to memorize a lot more. There's a lot more memorization than I thought there would be, as far as like equations and all of that goes. Yeah.
And you guys are pre-AP pre-cal, right?
So pre-AP over here, on-ramps over here.
It's gotten better, like, as the semester goes on, it gets a lot easier to put up with, like, looking at the homework and saying, oh, I only have 12 questions, but each of them has like 15 parts to it. And over time, you just kind of like get over it and you're like, okay, I only have 12 problems and each part is essentially giving me like a step-by-step, making sure that I'm setting myself up to solve it properly.
Well, at the beginning of each unit, we're given a packet that has everything that we're going to be doing for that unit, and each packet has multiple explorations, which is where you kind of, have class involvement and everyone talks about the questions that you have. Ms. Diaz is really only there to kind of like guide us or inform us on new concepts that we're not really aware of yet, but even those are already prefaced in the packet. So you just kind of start there, and for the most part, I would say it's half and half lesson, half just application. So you go through kind of like the background of what the new principle is that you're learning, and then you apply it to multiple things. So like for the unit that we're in right now, we were talking about like the equator and how that affects like, the radius and blah, 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 blah. But it was mostly just learning about the concept first, and then we practice as a group.
The biggest difference between Algebra 2 and Pre-Cal is that you have the entire class to do the test, but you do have to kind of allot your time, because for Pre-AP, typically you have a no calculator and a calculator portion, and if you don't have one or the other portion, the tests, if you like just have a calculator portion for that unit, it is generally longer. So you really have to focus on time management, especially if you're struggling just the slightest bit with everything.
So no little warm-up or review before, just come in and test.
The full class period.
And the tests usually aren't that long, so you should be able to finish it during the class period. If you don't finish it, it's more if you don't know what you're doing. You don't have time.
On-ramps. For on-ramps, we have 2 sections. One section is the Canvas portion, and that's for UT, which counts towards our grade for the UT class, as well as the written portion. Canvas portion can be open-ended, it can be multiple choice, it can be select as many as you as apply. While the written portion, we're given maybe 3 or 4 questions, and we have to just find the answer. We don't get it multiple choice.
And for the Canvas portion, it's online, and it's timed. So I think we have an 15 minutes.
It's either 15 minutes or an hour.
Yeah, and so if you haven't finished it within that allotted time, it just submits whatever you have left. So there's no way to finish that if you don't finish it within the 15 minutes. But we don't have a whole lot of questions. There's usually, I would say that there was like a max of like 18 questions on that portion.
And during those tests, I think the first semester we never used a calculator during the test.
Yeah,
And the written portion is from your teacher here?
It's still from UT, but it goes on our high school grade as well.
Okay, so the whole test is from UT?
Yes.
So UT doesn't give us reviews, and it's kind of hard to get a review because she's never seen the questions.
Right.
So,
And Ms. Diaz isn't allowed to see our test grades either. That's only accessible to you, as far as the campus portion, until they release them.
If you miss it, you miss it, and it usually costs a lot, because it's worth 75 points in total for the campus portion. So if you miss like one question's worth 5 points, it really decreases your grade a lot.
And with the written, since you're expected to write everything out step by step, you can get partial credit, but since for the online portion, you're not seeing every step that you're making, it's just, is it the right answer or not?
So why did you guys decide to take on-ramps as opposed to pre-AP pre-cal?
The college credit.
The college credit?
Absolutely.
Well, I heard that on-ramps is more the exploratory, kind of figure it out yourself, but I prefer the more traditional. The teacher teaches us what we need to do, we do some practice, and then have homework. I prefer that kind of one.
What do you think about tutoring? Do you have to go more in pre-cal for tutoring, or is it about the same for y'all?
I never went in algebra 2.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Do you go now though?
I do go a lot. I don't really, I didn't go either. We actually work together a lot on stuff. It's really easy to kind of understand concepts the more that you actually explain them to somebody else.
Mhm.
So not really like going to tutoring, but I mean, Jack and I will hang out all the time to be like, oh, I understand this question and this is how this works, and you know, vice versa.
I'd say for each homework, maybe an hour or two.
I was gonna say closer to like 2.5.
That's a daily thing?
Like every block day?
Like to complete one homework assignment, I try to spend a little bit more time. Like I'll complete a question in the online homework, and then I'll try to go back and redo it because it'll give you different numbers. And that will typically add more time,
Correct.
but you also understand a lot more.
So like average that out about 2 hours per block?
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say that our homework usually takes about an hour, maybe like 2 hours at tops. Another thing that I wanted to mention actually really quickly is that we have a lot of quizzes that are on Canvas, so they're online, so you do them at home. And for all of those quizzes, we have 2 submissions. So you get to submit it one time, and you could get like a 72, and then you can submit it a second time for up to 100. So usually the questions are either extremely similar or they're the same ones, and it will tell you which ones you got wrong. It won't tell you which ones you got right, or which is the correct answer, but it's definitely a factor into being able to, you know, get your grade as high as you can. So if you do it just for the first submission, I would say it would take maybe an hour for a quiz, and then if you do it twice, then it can take, you know, up to 2 hours or so. But
And Ms. Diaz encourage us to do it with groups.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What are y'all taking next year?
BC
Yeah,
calculus.
BC calculus and AP stats.
BC calculus,
AC calculus.
BC calculus, BC calculus?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior?
But I'm a senior as well.
Senior?
Probably Calc AB,
Calc AB?
maybe stats.
Yeah, they're both pretty different. I think the biggest difference is probably in the assessments. The homework is also pretty different because it's done online, and I remember in Algebra 2 a lot of my homework was on paper. So you know, it's a lot more like, I don't know how to explain it, but the homework is still pretty different, and the tests are a lot more different.
The homework is, there's more of it, and it's, I'd say, harder, but it's still just homework.
Right.
Factoring, I don't know why, that's a huge issue. I don't
I don't know why
understand why.
either.
A lot
Yeah,
of
we
people
don't
have
know
issues with factoring. Oh yeah,
I know, we
definitely.
factor
And,
every day.
We actually have a factoring worksheet. Yeah, and just like finding different ways to factor more than like the box method, because our Ms. Diaz is this one where she doesn't even like take it out of the parentheses, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. But I don't know, I felt like my teacher did a really good job. This one did a really good job with factoring, and it just didn't click with everybody. I don't know what made it click.
Yes, but you are also extraordinary. So you have to keep that in mind.
How about
you, Jack. Did factoring help you?
Oh,
What
yeah.
you learned in algebra 2?
Yes, so like do you remember the, difference of cubes?
Yes.
That was extremely helpful.
Excellent.
Doing that on your own really helps you,
The project.
like, figure out what on-ramps
That's
is
what I
like.
was just about to say.
Like, doing that group project,
Mm-hmm.
difference of cubes, that's kind of how on-ramps is.
Yeah, cause we have one of
Exactly.
those almost every day, and that was, I think, the biggest deciding factor between people who wanted to go into pre-AP versus on-ramps, was because they said, you know, this is what on-ramps is like, it's hands-on, it's you do it yourself, and, you know.
That sounds fun, like, that
Yeah.
sounds, so y'all like that model?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You guys obviously liked that
Yeah.
model, cause you chose on-ramps.
The one thing that, oh, sorry, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's cool to hear how other people think. A lot of times there will be solutions that you create to a problem, and then someone creates something completely different that you would have never thought of.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think would be great is encouraging a lot more like outside of class practice, because I know that like at the end of a class period you'll have time to finish some example problems or something like that, but other than that, that's kind of all of the outside of class, or like that's the only in-class practice you get, whereas I remember in Algebra 2 you would have like an entire day dedicated to just working a bunch of different problems, and that doesn't typically happen in pre-AP.
Yeah, I would say that there wasn't really like a big like safety net, I guess, where you like had the time to kind of, like you didn't have to worry about creating your own time to understand the concept or to see your teacher. You kind of knew that you were gonna have that time in class. That's not really how it is now.
I feel like one of the things is because for pre-Cal, there's no review of algebra or anything usually, it's just to know it.
I feel that it kind of comes down to your personality. If you're the kind of person who like really enjoys taking control of your learning and you have the kind of drive to teach yourself, then on-ramps is probably better for you. But I'd assume that they're equally as challenging. It's the same content, just taught in a different way.
I feel like pre-AP, I've been talking to a lot of my sophomore friends. I'm a sophomore, so a lot of my sophomore friends who are in pre-AP pre-AP pre-cal really wish that they would have done the on-ramps.
Well, if I'm being honest, from what I've heard just now, I feel like there is less of a workload in on-ramps. You're getting college credit, you get to be involved with other students, you figure out how to solve things your own way. It's much more hands-on.
Without calculator.
And you still have the help of your teacher. I think that when I was in my sophomore year and they were talking to us about, you know, what they wanted, it kind of gave me this vibe that like the teacher would be like, all right, just do it. But that's not how it is. Your teacher is still there to teach you new concepts and help you understand. It's just more of an open class discussion than it is a lecture.
I know somebody who took on-ramps last year, and I know that last year going into pre-cal, I was really intimidated by the idea of teaching yourself. That really scared me, which is why I took pre-AP. But once I listened to him actually talk about the class, I was like, I probably could have done that, and I've gotten the college credit. So I kind of regret that, but, you know.
Remember geometry. SOHCAHTOA, that is a big part.
What else? Not just or do you have any suggestions for the current algebra 2?
Quiz grade. Interesting.
With regards to the practice, what do they like? Normally students only do it when we give it for grade, right?
Yeah.
So what is your advice on that? We even give extra practice, so.
So what about your assignments per 6 weeks? Do you have your normal, just like algebra 2, your 2 tests, 2 quizzes, what?
Our quizzes, we have a lot
We have a lot of
of quizzes.
quizzes.
Yeah.
And our homework grades, we do have a lot of homework grades.
We have a homework pretty much every class that we learn a new topic, which is almost every class. So,
Are there 2 tests
And
for
2
6
tests.
weeks, or
yes. It's the Canvas portion and the written portion.
does anybody else have any final questions? I think one question that the kids would ask me, that's what I would ask, is like, y'all said that the semesters are flipped, and I'm thinking in my head, that doesn't make sense to me, because I'm thinking, okay, you start with the unit circle and you go on from there, like, so I'm thinking,
From
Okay, my last question is, in a couple, like one sentence, what would you tell our students making the choice today or tomorrow or whatever? Should they consider before deciding which pre-cal to take? Like one sentence. Anybody else?
I think that basically sums it up.
Yeah.
Alright, you can stop recording.